Astro, it's good to be talking with you about things that are near and dear to us both. Last time, I think a while ago, we had a great conversation about purpose and profit, how they are natural partners and force multipliers, I think is the way you put it. And we talked about how we've created this sort of dualistic mindset and almost a false choice between the two. It was the most intellectually rigorous and thought-provoking conversation I've had with anybody on the subject.
Thanks.
And it greatly inspired the piece I was writing for Wired at the time. So that's a long way of saying that it's my delight to be captaining this conversation with the captain of Moonshots. Tell us a little bit about X. So there's a lot you can't tell, and it seems like your mission is the impossible. So what constitutes a moonshot? What can you tell us about X?
Sure. So a moonshot is not just a problem. And we'll get back to this. Maybe we can talk about the Sustainable Development Goals. But I get this question all the time. Clean water is a moonshot. No, clean water is an incredibly important problem. But a moonshot is a huge problem in the world that you want to be able to solve, coupled to a radical proposed solution for solving that problem. And if your proposal is that you're going to spend more money than other people, you're going to work later into the night than other people, that's not a moonshot. That's not a radical solution. That's just more of the same. And radical doesn't mean cool. Radical means go try something new. And then the third piece, which is also required for it to be a moonshot, is that there has to be some reason to believe that you can actually go do that thing. Now, in our particular case, that third piece is there has to be a hard technology core to it. So you could cast Gandhi's Salt March as a moonshot, but that wouldn't be the kind of moonshot that we would take. We would require that the hardest parts of making this science fiction sounding thing that would then hopefully solve this huge problem have sort of technology at the center. And so X's job, I get asked frequently, like, when are you guys going to start shipping? And I think we're already shipping because our product is new projects, new businesses for Alphabet. So when we build Google Brain and then launch that back into Google, or we build the self-driving car company Waymo and then give that to Alphabet, when we build the life science business Verily and then we give that to Alphabet, those are our products. These are moonshots that we built, they're ready to go out in the world, and then we hand them to Alphabet. That's us shipping.
You mentioned the SDGs, so it seems like they, in many ways, could be the ultimate moonshot. How do you choose what projects to work on? How do you think about moonshots in the context of the SDGs?
So we use the SDGs, but also other sources. So let me give you 2 or 3 examples. There are problems listed in the SDGs, things like access or clean water, that are super important. But as I said, that's an inspiration. So we can take the need for clean water and then sit down and say, do we have a radical proposed solution and some underlying unbelievably hard tech thing that if we could get it done would solve that problem? So we use them to try to get us started, but by itself, we can't say, because it's an SDG, therefore we can make it into a moonshot. We have to get lucky, and so we're sort of constantly trying with problems. So cybercrime is not listed as one of the SDGs, and yet cybersecurity is a huge problem with the world. So the SDGs haven't cornered the market on world problems, but they are certainly one of the important areas that we go to when we try to find problems to couple with new technologies.
You know, you gave a TED Talk, and you opened by talking about JFK's dream to put a man on the moon, the original moonshot. You said some interesting things about dreams, that they always seem too good to be true, that their audaciousness makes people inherently uncomfortable. And I remember thinking, well, maybe dreams are the jet fuel for moonshot thinking. And humanity's way of visualizing sort of our highest potential and purpose. And that really resonated with me because at some point I realized that when I connected the dots on my own life, that dreams had really very much shaped my journey. The journey that led me ultimately to the tech revolution, the front lines of that in Silicon Valley, but also that began on the front lines of war. And the dreams that were really born out of my heritage as a Coptic Egyptian, as a refugee of Black September war in Jordan, and ultimately as an immigrant to the United States, very much kind of gave me a way to think about a future I wanted to create. And I think it was a way, my way of not accepting the unacceptable. And I dreamt about a world that understood that just because your circumstances are broken, it doesn't mean that you are. A world that understands that talent is universal, but opportunity isn't. A world that understands, most of all, that a cornerstone of justice is fair access. And those dreams very much drove what I did as a technologist, as an entrepreneur, and they certainly drive what I do with Kiva and Mozilla today. So the question that I often sort of reflect on when thinking about dreams, you say that dreams aren't just a vision, they are also action for making them real, concrete strategies and plans. And tell me about how you create an environment at X where your team is not only thinking in terms of moonshot visions and dreams, but also acting on them.
So I'll give you 3 secrets, which we talk about all the time at X. Because telling people to go do something 10 times bigger than people have tried to do it before is not by itself clear or motivating. You have to unpack it. Why are we doing that? Why does that make sense? Are we setting ourselves up for a problem? And it turns out that there's 3 totally separate reasons to try to make something 10 times better instead of 10% better. The first, the most boring of the 3, is that it's about the same amount of work. If you want to make a car run on a gallon of gasoline for an extra 10% of the miles, you're going to have to be smarter than everyone who's ever built an internal combustion engine before. Good luck with that, right? That's going to be a huge amount of work. If I ask you to do it to make a car run on a gallon of gasoline for 500 miles, you might not be able to do it, but you know instinctively you're going to have to start over, and maybe you'll get lucky and it just won't be that hard. So the first thing is, the payoff is huge relative to the 10% shot, and it's not actually that much more work. The second one is when I just said, you have to make a car that runs on a gallon of gasoline for 500 miles, you immediately start going with, whoa, we're going to have to totally start over here. And I just took you from an intellectual place, a smartness competition with everyone in the world, to a place of creativity where you lived as a child. And that is an incredibly powerful place. And now that I'm explaining it to you, you resonate with the idea in a way that if I just said, go do 10x things, you don't feel it in the same way. So I think part of it is unpacking these things. And the third is being passionate is inspiring. Being passionate causes us to bring our best selves to work. It causes us to stay later at work because we want to, not because the boss is mad at us. And so you get something for nothing there too. When I'm encouraging you to do that, you feel lit up. So it's a combination of, if you bring me something at X, and it is a 10% thing, and I say, oh, well, thank you, but that's not really our thing here, then you feel a little sad, but you make a mental note. I guess that's not how we do it here. The social norms kick in. Now, I don't even have to say it to you. Your peers say to you, that seems a little 10x. Let's do a 10x thing instead. And once that immune system kicks in, then all of a sudden, it's hard to do it the boring way. It's hard to do it the inefficient way anymore.
Maybe the ultimate moonshot is how we upgrade the human operating system to think, go from sort of the linear 10x incremental improvements to exponential thinking, or 10% to 10x. My friend Salim Ismail, the founding CEO of Singularity University, talks about how that when you try to innovate or bring about change in an organization, that the immune system will attack you. And because everything we design in society, organizations of all shapes and sizes, are designed to resist change and avoid risk and mistakes. And so it strikes me that in some ways what you have done is reverse engineered this immune system problem in the way that you have set things up at Axe. how do you incentivize your team to take great risks, to destigmatize failure, to shut down projects if they're not working out?
So yes, that's exactly what X feels like. That's my job. I see myself as a culture engineer trying to design the immune system to get people to do the things that we actually want them to do, but they tend in organizations not actually to do. So I just described one where if you want to do a 10% kind of thing, you just can't make progress. That's a kind of disincentive. There's an incentive. You bring a 10x idea, and everyone, not just me, will say, oh my God, what a gorgeous idea. As soon as you say that, now you feel really good. But this is the trick. Then I say, okay, let's see how fast we can kill this idea, because that's how we roll here at X. And then we start talking, and you help me figure out in half an hour on the whiteboard that the idea I just told you of yours was gorgeous, isn't going to work. When I high-five you in that meeting in front of everybody because you helped me intellectually sort out that it wasn't going to work, it's almost too good to be true. You just got 2 pieces of credit. You got the credit for bringing up a 10x idea and for having the intellectual honesty and structure to be able to dismantle the idea. And both of those are important. And when we model those things for each other, then when we go away, people remember that. So yes, we do things like bonus people when they kill their projects. Some of that kind of incentive structure is possible. I can point at multiple people at X who got promoted right after they killed a project. And if you can't do that in your organization, you will not have your projects end, no matter how bad they are. But some of it is also the storytelling. So when I say to the people at X, we're going to work on the hardest parts of the problem first, because that's how we kill our projects. Yes, they hear me, but that's not visceral. And then I said, this was about 2 years ago at an event like this, if we were trying to get a monkey to stand on top of a 10-foot pedestal and recite Shakespeare, which should we do first? Build the pedestal or train the monkey? Everyone knows that building the pedestal isn't very useful because we haven't actually de-risked the project. Your boss will come by and be like, hey, nice pedestal, right? And so you feel really good temporarily. But we can all see how much that's a waste of time. That's a silly example, but it's so visceral that people not only say #monkey first at X, I have now seen them put a little monkey icon on their slides to help each other understand which part of what they're working on is actually the monkey.
This is really fascinating. I think it gets to the heart of things around, we don't stop and think often, what is it we're really incentivizing in the way that we reward and punish or ignore behavior? And this idea of pinpointing a behavior that you want to reward, I think, is critical. And so much of what you're talking about, it flips conventional wisdom on its head, and yet at the same time, it's just eminently rational and logical. So yeah, it's quite fascinating. I think one of your teaching principles, actually, so 2 things. One of the things I find the hardest about being an entrepreneur is this idea of holding 2 opposing concepts in your head at the same time, sort of passion and dispassion, right? You have to be passionate enough to believe in your dream when everyone thinks it's crazy, but dispassionate enough to be able to step back and see what isn't working about it. And you talk about this in a great way, and I'd love for everyone to hear just sort of you riff on it a bit.
So we are not going to get into a rhythm together at X, at any group, unless we recognize these tensions. Because when you have to hold them, it sucks to have to hold these tensions. But if we can name them and we all know we're doing it together, then it feels less like a mistake in the organization and more like an inherent tension we have to manage. So being passionately dispassionate is one of the things that are literally on the posters at X, because I expect you to drive the project that you're doing passionately like an entrepreneur and then be able to pause, just like we did with the whiteboard there, every once in a while, totally dispassionately and say, are we wasting our time or not? Could we be doing better, more good for the world if we worked on something else? And I expect you to be able to do that with me. That's a tension. Responsibly irresponsible is another one of our tensions. We want this Peter Pan's kind of feeling at X so that people can unleash that 5-6-year-old creativity that they have to go look into green fields that people haven't been weird enough to go look into before. But we need to be responsible about it because we're trying to be the card counters of innovation, not just the gamblers of innovation. So reminding them that we have to be responsibly irresponsible, Peter Pans with PhDs, and saying, yes, I need you to be weirder than almost everybody, and I need you to do it on purpose and with some control. And I know that that's hard, but I think you're up to it. Patiently impatient is another one. Because people at X say, well, if we're shooting for things that are going to take 5 to 10 years to really get out there, then, we work hard today, we don't work hard today, what difference does it make? And the difference is, if we don't work hard today, if we aren't impatient every single day, it's not going to take 5 to 10 years. It's going to take never. It's just never going to happen. So I need you both to be able to wait 7 years for this really to go start solving the problem we aspire to solve, and today to be like, I cannot wait till tomorrow to find out if we're on the right track or not, to get this next step done. So I think recognizing it helps a lot.
I think that there's also something profound in the juxtaposition of the words you use, because we sort of increasingly living in this sort of very dualistic black-white world of extremes. It's either A or B, and the truth is the world is more nuanced than that. As human beings, we're capable of greater complexity, and I think it's just wonderful. Sort of those words are a reminder of that. One of your teaching principles is to get things out into the real world as fast as possible so you can learn as fast as possible. It would be great to hear a little bit about your experience in doing that with Project Loon.
Yeah, Project Loon was both a great success on this front and an incredible pain. We really couldn't do it any other way. When you're making something, I'll give you 2 examples that are somewhat related.
And for those who don't know what Project Loon is, yes.
Project Loon is an attempt to get the internet to the other 4 billion people on the planet who don't have the internet using stratospheric balloons. So this is an ad hoc network of balloons that float between 20 and 22 kilometers up in the sky, talk to each other, and beam the internet down to the ground. And in order to do that, there's some things like these balloons are the size of a small house. There is no way to figure out how they're going to last for 200 days at 1 or 2% atmospheric pressure and at 60 degrees below 0 Celsius in a lab. You just have to put them up, because there's no lab that big. You just have to put them up in the sky and see what happens over a long period of time. And when you want to steer these balloons by having them take on ballast and go down, this is air ballast, or let out that air ballast and go up so that they can catch winds going in different directions. Nobody really knows what the winds are like up there. NOAA has an estimate, but the estimates, the estimate of one of their boxes is 10 kilometers on a side, but we're moving inside one of those boxes. So we just have to go there and try it. Now, in this particular case, it's been a long road. We've learned a lot, but we are now at the place where we're actually starting to serve real data to normal people. We just announced a couple months ago that Peru, in the middle of this flooding, we've started to just deliver data to people who are in these life and death situations, who otherwise would not have had access to this data. And sort of really a profound end to this process of all this testing that we've been doing for 5 years.
Well, as someone who cares deeply about fair access, that's incredibly inspiring to hear. I also think about the real world, sort of where the rubber hits the road. With things like Kiva and Mozilla, sort of these bottoms-up grassroots movements have a very interesting kind of real-world testing from the get-go, where you get sort of mass numbers of people across the world collectively working on a problem that they're deeply passionate about. In Kiva's case, it's almost 3 million entrepreneurs in 80-something countries, lenders supporting them across 190 countries, hundreds of partners. And there's always, they keep sort of, there's a checkpoint of reality about what it takes for the Kiva platform to serve so many varieties of sort of local realities. And I'm always humbled when I am out in the field and learning sort of how much we miss back in our bubble in Silicon Valley when we're solving problems at distance. And similarly with Mozilla, tens of thousands of coders around the world, coding, bug fixing, translating Firefox browser into 90 languages. In contrast, say, with Google Chrome, which is in 47 languages, but not that anybody's counting. But I was told that making this controversial would be make it more interesting, and since we agree on so much, is the best I could come up with. I hope you don't mind. No, but it's point being is that we often talk about the wisdom of crowds, but the power of crowds to sort of bring real-world reality into problem solving is also, I think, relevant. What's one thing you would like people to remember if they only remembered one thing, sort of from this conversation? Because you've covered a lot of ground.
If I could leave you with one thing, it would be this. I have people all the time come and say, "Oh, other people can do moonshots, but I can't." But you'd be shocked. The large companies say they can't do moonshots because it's too much risk. That's not their thing. The small companies say they can't do moonshots because they don't have the money, so that's not their thing. The academics say they write about moonshot-y kind of stuff, but they don't actually take moonshots. Governments say, "Oh, that's not us. That was like last century. We don't do that anymore." Moonshots is not about how much money you have. All you need is bravery, and everyone has that. You need creativity, and everyone has that. You have to be willing to iterate, to be very scrappy, try something, believe that something huge is possible, but then start really small and try something. Everyone can do that. It doesn't take a lot of money. So whether it's specifically to the SDGs or another problem that you're passionate about, don't wait for someone else to do the moonshot. You can do the moonshot. Pick something today, commit it to yourself. You might be shocked how many magical things happen right after you decide to do it.
So, on that note, I'm reminded of something that science fiction writer William Gibson said: the future's already here, it's just not evenly distributed. And talking with you makes me feel like I'm visiting the future, a future that I want to live in. And that gives me great hope, especially at a time when it feels like humanity's at an inflection point and we're facing so much uncertainty. And at a time, I think, when most of us, whether we're business or civic leaders, entrepreneurs, technologists, are asking some pretty fundamental questions, like what is our role in building a good society? How do we bring more of our humanity to the way that we do business and innovate? How do we, and conversely, how do we bring the advantages of business and technology to all of humanity? So you're reminding us that the answer to those questions lies in our passionately dispassionate dreams.
Exactly.
And that one dream can transform a million or even a billion realities, and that's about the most hopeful thing that I can think of. So thank you, Astro, for inspiring and educating us to infinity and beyond.
Thank you for having me, Julie. Thank you.
Do we have time for Q&A, or are we getting the hook? We do? Okay, great. I think we have time for a couple questions. I see a gentleman there.
Hi, thank you very much. My name is Imano Nyame. I am a Plus Social Good Connector. I want to ask this quick question. I think both of you have really explained so well what it takes to move on from the idea stage to actually work on your project. Well, I'm Ghanaian, and I'm coming from the Ghanaian, or let me say African perspective. What if you are faced with the fear of failure to the point where you really cannot take the first step, but perhaps you listen to a couple of motivational videos on YouTube and all of that, and you had the courage to start something, and then after a week or two, you go back to the normal stage of being afraid of achieving something. What is it that can help you? I mean, I need something like, not necessarily a motivation, but what is that urge that can help you move past that kind of fear so you can actually work out something. Yeah, thanks.
Great.
Well, I certainly have one, but I'm interested to hear yours too. Well, I have lots, but let's start with this. Failure is a word that expresses fear, but phrase it this way. Do you want to run experiments and learn? Sure, everybody wants to run experiments and learn. That's life, that's growth. Okay, we don't learn very much when we succeed. We only learn when we don't get it right. So you should be in a panic to carefully choose a whole bunch of experiments to run, get negative information, learn, and grow. Because that's the way, if you want to win in the long run, you're going to make the most progress. And phrased in that way, I didn't say the word failure, but actually it's a long series of things that don't go your way that you're actually now purposefully chasing because you recognize that's where growth and learning comes from.
Yeah, I love the question because it's really central to so much. It's human nature to fear failure, but I think when I find myself in that place of sort of clinging to or afraid to take a risk, I remind myself of sort of the Edisonian view. I haven't failed, I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work. And so I think, there's these sort of mental tricks that we can, in real time, play with each other when we notice that we're resistant to taking a risk, is reframing it as a path of learning, and that experimentation and learning is the path to success. I also remind myself of people that inspire me, the fact that Steve Jobs got fired from Apple. And that was the greatest gift in his life because it led to a period of creativity that allowed him to do what he did. Or Al Gore, not becoming president. He went on to win the Nobel Peace Prize. So history is littered with people who have, quote, failed and went on to do even greater things. And so I think those are some of the ways that we can sort of trick our minds, if you will, when they get fearful. Do we have time for another question?
We're all out of time.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you.
Great.